Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this info session on the eviction moratorium. I'm Emily from Silicon Valley at Home, and I'm here with Karen, Jorge, and Cindy from the Law Foundation to quickly talk through the new statewide eviction moratorium extension. We know that this is a very difficult time for many renters and small property owners, and we will continue to work with you on long-term solutions. There are protections from eviction, but they only work if you take action to enforce them. Karen will go over protections in English, Jorge will explain them in Spanish, and Cindy will explain them in Vietnamese. There will be an opportunity to ask questions at the end of each session, and we will put up any phone numbers or email addresses referenced in a slide at the end. We ask that you share and post these links as broadly as possible. And now I'll turn it over to Karen to go into the details.
Thanks, Emily. So the statewide eviction moratorium has been extended to September 30th of 2021. So if a renter has been unable to pay either their rent or utilities because of COVID-19 for any month since March 1st of 2020, there are protections against being evicted for non-payment of that rent. So the first thing is that a landlord has to be giving a 15-day notice that tells the tenant to pay rent or return a declaration of COVID-19 related financial distress. The blank declaration has to be attached to this notice. The tenant then has to return that declaration within 15 days. Now, the notice also has to include information about how to apply to rental assistance. There are also different rules in play here for different time periods. So from March 1st of 2020 through August 31st of 2020, a tenant can just never be evicted for non-payment of rent or those utilities if the reason they didn't pay is because of COVID-19 and they've signed and returned the declaration of COVID-19 related financial distress within 15 days of the landlord giving them that notice and asking for it. Now for September 1st of 2020 through now September 30th of 2021, a tenant can never be evicted for non-payment of any rent or utilities if, again, the reason they didn't pay is because of COVID-19 and they've signed and returned the declaration of COVID-19 related financial stress within the 15 days every time the landlord has asked for it. And the tenant has to pay 25% of the total rent owed between September 1st, 2020 and September 30th, 2021 before September 30th. So just to be clear, if you are receiving rental assistance, this should actually cover all of the outstanding rent and cover that 25% that the tenant has to pay. Now, we recognize that many tenants have not been able to do this, but if tenants have been making partial payments during this time, they should be doing their best to keep a record of what was paid, when they paid it, what month it's for, and if possible, they should be writing the month's rent is meant to cover in the memo line of each payment they're making. If you have not been doing this so far, just do your best right now to write down what you've paid since March of 2020 and start keeping records for what you're doing from here on. Now, the biggest change with the new extension is that tenants and landlords can now both apply for rental assistance, and that will cover 100% of the total rent owed from April 2020 through September of 2021. And they might even be eligible for rent assistance to cover some months after September of 2021. Tenants and landlords should apply now, either through the state or local program. To find out which program a tenant qualifies for, there's a website from Santa Clara County, sccrenthelp.org. Now, it is especially important to apply now because the new extension includes protections from eviction even after September 30th if the tenant has applied for rental assistance, but they haven't received it yet. And so finally, landlords cannot evict tenants without a legal reason if the notice is expiring between March 1st of 2020 and September 30th of 2021. So this means that the eviction notice has to say the reason that the landlord is asking the tenant to leave. And if a tenant receives this notice, they should call us, call the Law Foundation for free legal advice to find out whether the reason in the notice is a good enough legal reason for them to be asked to leave before September 30th of 2021. Now, most importantly, we just want everyone to remember, stay put, don't move, submit the declaration and seek rental assistance now. There are other local laws that might protect tenants, and if a tenant has any questions or receives an eviction notice, they should call the Law Foundation at 408-280-2424.
All right, sharing the slide. Do we have any questions for Karen? Once again, please feel free to put any questions in the chat. We do have a question in the chat from Jeff Zell. You see that there, Karen?
I do. Do tenants have to respond to every 15-day notice? Yes. If you receive a 15-day notice, there's going to be a declaration attached, and you should absolutely sign that every single time you receive it and submit it in the way that the notice asks you to. That might be in person if there's an address. That might be through email if they've provided an email address. Or it might be some other way, but you have to make sure you're actually reading that notice to see what way the landlord has asked for it to be returned. Another question I'm seeing, do you know how impacted the state program is right now? I fear the program may become overwhelmed like EDD. We have some kind of information about that. They are promising to be getting up to a capacity and speeding things up. We do know that getting payments out has been slow, but it's important to remember that if you do apply now, even if processing is slow, there are protections after the September 30th time period, where if you have a pending application, even if you haven't received the assistance yet, there are extra protections for tenants. But we have every expectation that things are going to start getting faster as we get more experience with this. Another question is, when does the moratorium end? So right now, the end date for this, true protection period is September 30th of 2021. So tenants should be expecting to start paying, again, full rent in October of 2021, with some of these extra protections happening if they've applied for rental assistance already. We have applied for rental assistance from the state in March. I've been following up. Yeah, again, we do know that things are going slowly, but the protections are going to be in place after September 30th for people who have applications completed and submitted, even if you have not received assistance yet. What is the difference between a notice and a summons? This is a great question. A notice is going to come first. And the notice at this time, especially if it's non-payment, is going to lay out month by month, here's how much you owe me. And within 15 days, you need to either pay it, sign the attached document, or sign the attached document. It's also going to include a bunch of instructions and information on here's where you can go to apply for rental assistance, here's how long you have to do that, and things like that. So it's going to be a few pieces of paper, but it's going to come first. And again, it's going to lay out month by month, here's how much you were supposed to have paid. A summons is what's going to come if you have not responded to that notice. And this is a packet of paper from the court. It's going to say summons and then complaint at the top. And this means that there's an eviction lawsuit with the court, and that you've now been served with an actual lawsuit, and you only have 5 days to respond to that summons and complaint to initiate court processes. If you receive either of these things, a notice or a summons, don't wait, call legal assistance. Again, the Law Foundation phone number is 408-280-2424, because you want to make sure that we're telling you exactly what you've received and what you need to do. And I'll just, in case no one else can see these chats, someone has very kindly offered that assembly offices. So if you reach out to your local representative, they're able to reach out to the state rent assistance program to check on the status of your application. If someone is threatened with eviction due to non-payment of rent, which is due to loss of income from COVID, does the tenant need to list that as a previous eviction when applying for future housing? So no, the law says that, well, if they've been evicted, they may need to disclose this to avoid just lying on some sort of application. But the law does say that evictions and any sort of alleged non-payment of COVID-19 rental debt cannot and should not be used as a negative factor when evaluating an application to housing. So the protections for tenants after September 2021 are essentially that an eviction can be stayed, or the proceedings just really slow down and wait while the rent assistance application is pending and being processed. This is something that it gets very complicated and very confusing. So after September of 2021, we highly recommend call us, check our website, to get this information, because it does get complicated after September. Again, and so there's another follow-up question right after that. Is there a document or something that we can provide letting people know they're protected? We are updating our website, which is up on the screen now. Thank you, Emily. And you can always call us to get information to figure out how protected you are, depending on the status of the law at the time.
All right, another question I got in the chat was, what does being affected by COVID mean?
Right, so being affected by COVID can mean actually a lot of things. Kind of the obvious, I was laid off because of COVID-19, you know, especially restaurants and things like that. We're having to do a lot of layoffs. That's an effect by COVID, as well as just any sort of reduced hours. This includes if you had to self-reduce your hours because daycares and schools were closed, and so you needed to now come and take care of your children. It can be increased medical expenses if you needed to pay for medical care because you had COVID, if you were caring for someone else because of COVID. As well as just generally anything that was really related to this pandemic that impacted your ability to bring in the same amount of income that you were receiving before the pandemic.
Okay, and another one. Should I submit a declaration even if my landlord has not sent me an eviction notice?
So You absolutely can. Our recommendation is that if you're taking that route, please do it in a way where you can confirm and somehow verify that you've done it. Take a picture of it, keep a copy if possible, and if you can afford it, send it by some sort of certified mail so that you have a receipt showing that it was received by the landlord. If you send it through an email or something, you'll have that saved as well. So you absolutely can do it before a landlord has provided it to you, but really we recommend doing it in a way that you can somehow later prove that you did.
And I guess like might be a follow-up. What if my landlord won't take my declaration?
Send it anyway. And the same rules apply. Send it in some way where they have to accept it from you, like certified mail, and in a way that you can prove that you've submitted it.
And what
oh, I'm sorry. There's a question that came up for me that I see. Are landlords allowed to increase the rent starting September 1st? If you're seeing rent increases, or if your landlord gave you a notice of a rent increase, give us a call at 408-280-2424. There's no real moratorium on rent increases, but there are a lot of laws in play that, depending on what kind of unit you're in, there might be rent control based on a state of emergency. There might be a limit on how much your rent can be raised. So if you're getting a notice for rent increases, please give us a call.
And what happens after the moratorium ends and I can't pay my rent?
So after the moratorium ends and you cannot pay your rent, what you're going to want to do is keep contacting our local services for any sort of rent support that they can provide for you. And like I mentioned before, the state assistance program at this time is also, you're able to see if you can qualify for rental assistance for longer than that September date. So really, if you're impacted now, or if you are impacted in the next couple of months, just apply for the state rent assistance and get some help.
For some reason, everything's now a direct message. Okay. Are landlords legally required to provide the declaration of COVID impact form to the tenant when giving them an eviction notice?
If it's a notice for non-payment, yes. So the notice that you're receiving is going to say you have 15 days. Here's how much rent you owe me. Here's some information on how long you have to respond to this and how you can respond to it. And here's how you pay or apply for rent assistance. And then it must attach the blank declaration of COVID-19 related financial distress for you to sign and turn back in.
Okay, and the next question we have here is, what is being done to physically help tenants complete their application?
There are several organizations that are helping people out. If you go to either of these websites, there are lists of partner organizations who are able to help you. You can also use these phone numbers to be linked up with someone. I know that they are going to be having drop-in clinic type places to do them in person. I know that you can apply over the phone if you don't have an email address. So starting with these websites and the phone numbers will help you find where you can apply for or where you can get help with those applications.
Oh, this person clarified that question. They wanted to know what the Law Foundation was doing to help people fill out the applications.
Oh, okay, so the Law Foundation, we're definitely hooking people up with the right, where to go, which application to use. We can offer advice on that. Certainly, if you have a notice or if you were served an unlawful detainer, we'll walk you through the steps necessary to respond to that. We are still in the process of kind of updating our own policies and procedures on how we're going to help people through these applications. I know that we have a goal of we're all going to at least start doing them. So give us a call and we'll link you up with what you need.
Thank you for that. If anyone else has any questions, please drop them into the chat. But as we finish up on our time here, we have about 10 more minutes for English. So to finish up, I don't know why chat suddenly became disabled for everyone, but feel free, you should be able to still direct message me and I can ask those questions. But as we're waiting, could you repeat the 3 things that tenants need to do in order, basically your 3 S's?
That's right. So we just really want everyone to remember, stay in your home, stay put, submit the declaration, and seek rental assistance now. And again, you can always give the Law Foundation a call for free legal advice at 408-280-2424.
All right, and I have a reminder via, where do you go to apply for the state rental assistance?
So that's up on your screen right now. You can start with Santa Clara County's sccrenthelp.org. They have a chart for which program to use based on your own income. You can also call 211 if you need help determining if you qualify. And then you can either go to housingiskey.com or preventhomelessness.org or call either of the phone numbers that are up on the slide now. Those are the 2 programs. Housing is Key is the state program, and preventhomelessness.org is our local program.
Thank you. And I got a message from someone to let people know that emergency rental assistance allows for both back rent and forward rent if a person qualifies, so that you might be able to look at there. We have a question. Do undocumented people have the same protections as citizens?
Yes, they do. There is no citizenship question in these applications, so everyone should feel welcome to apply.
What month should tenants pay 20% by October 2021?
So the protections without rent assistance is that you must pay for the time period September 1st, 2020 through September 30th, 2021. You have to pay 25% of all of that rent before September 30th of 2021. That's the last date. Now, again, if you apply for rent assistance instead, they're going to cover 100%. So that's covering that. The 25% that you're required to pay will be covered within that 100% from the state rent assistance. So if you apply for that now, and then the protections are going to kick in after September if your application is still pending. So we really encourage everyone to just apply for assistance now.
Okay, I think that seems to be all the questions for now. Last call for questions. If not, we are able to end the English session early, and we'll come back up with the Spanish session at 1:30. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. The contact information is on your is on the screen. Feel free to share that broadly. And thank you so much for joining us today.